Thanks for having me. And what an honor to get to speak to our Part of Life community and to be one of the speakers.
It
I'm doing great. Thank you so much. I'm actually at the moment at my mother's house. I am originally from Bulgaria, and I get to spend a month this summer here. So um, I'm feeling great.
that's awesome. Well, we really are going coast to coast with the family unit today, because yesterday I got to speak to your wife calling in from Brooklyn.
Yes, we're all over the world, indeed.
Yes, yes. So before we jump into the topic at hand, for folks that maybe don't know much about you and your own story, I'd love to hear if you could share a little bit about that journey and maybe how you got to Power to Fly, the starting of Power to Fly. What was the impetus for this?
Thank you so much, Shanta, for this question. It's a story I really love telling. Um, and so, as I just mentioned, I'm originally from Bulgaria, and I left Bulgaria at the age of 19. I left for college, and I studied in Amsterdam. So I spent about 5 years there. I got a Bachelor of Business degree, and then I got bored and I decided that I don't want to work in business. Funny, full circle that, so many years later, I am a CEO of a company and kind of running operations, but I wanted to be an artist. And so I spent a summer traversing the US, looking for, and it had always been kind of a dream of mine to go to the US. And so I spent the summer traversing the US and I found the Tisch School of the Arts at NYU. And I actually, yeah, I arrived in New York a week before September 11th to start my graduate program. I had a lot of fun with it. I worked on the cusp of, new technologies and kind of technology and its application to everything, really. And that's a topic for another day. I want to really focus on what we're talking about today. But a few years after finalizing my graduate degree, I got a chance to become the chief technology officer at avaz.org. This is spelled avaaz.org. And this organization I have the honor now of being on the board. I came back to Avaz to serve on their board about 2 years ago, after a 7-year hiatus. And at Avaz, I got to lead a global distributed tech team for about 7 years, and until the organization grew from 0 to 45 million members worldwide. So it was a great experience. But 7 years in, and a couple of different factors collided, which again, time is too short to tell the full story. But it had something to do with me reflecting on my privilege, and all the people who have ever helped me in life. I decided that it was time for me to start giving back, right, and focus the rest of my career on giving back. I was 37 years old at the time. During my tenure at Avaz, I had my first three kids in a 5-year span. I now have four, but those first 3 and 5 years was quite a lot. And obviously you're juggling work and your family and the whole thing. But I clearly remember when my youngest of those three was 2.5. That was 2013. And there was a big movement around female representation in the workplace, starting in the news and everything around that, right? Corporate America was waking up to that problem, and really doing real commitments to change things. Um, I reflected on my own journey as female CTO and how my story was actually a story of hope. And that was kind of opposite to the stories that I was hearing about other experience of women in the workplace, right? And why do I say it was a story of hope? Well, I had a career, I had my kids and family, and I was able to balance it all. And I wondered why. And obviously, it was because I was in an organization that was supportive of work-life balance, but it was also allowing remote work. Avaz was actually one of the first companies to embrace remote work since its founding in 2006, right? It wasn't post-COVID that they switched to remote work. It was from the very beginning. It was, mindfully designed to be that way. So I really started connecting the dots that remote work is actually key to diversity. And it's key to caregivers continuing their part in the workplace, right? You might have left and you now live in the burbs because you wanted more space for your kids, or you might be living abroad and you would never have a chance to work for um, one of these brands that are coming out of Silicon Alley and Silicon Valley. But I decided to start solving the problem of diversity in the workplace by connecting underrepresented folks to companies that care about doing the right thing, one, but also care about better business results, because we all know that when you have the right representation, when you have the right inclusive policies, when you're really investing in the belonging of folks, and you have diverse teams, business results get better. So yeah, one thing led to another, also a whole long story, but we launched the first version of PowerToFly in the summer of 2014, and the rest is history. Here we are 10 years later. By the way, it's PowerToFly's 10-year anniversary this year, and I just couldn't be more proud of the decade of impact that we've had. I'm also married to an openly transgender woman, Andrea Brianna. She spoke yesterday. I encourage you to go check out her talk. And that really opened my eyes in a very personally close way to the story of struggle for transgender folks in today's world. Yes, the corporate world, but world in general. It has also opened my eyes on how celebration of our queer identities can not only be the right thing to do, but also so fun and fulfilling.
Yes. Andrea did, and I talked about that yesterday, about letting in our, for example, letting in our allies as part of the celebration and part of the culture, and so that they can be in on it because they actually want to enjoy it. Like the people that sign up for it, that are so in, if you just let them, if we just give them the opportunity.
Absolutely.
So what month is the 10-year anniversary, by the way?
It's going to be in August this year.
In August. Oh, right in time for my mother's birthday. So that's perfect.
I mean, yeah, just around the corner.
Great. That's so exciting. So with only 2% of C-suite executives identifying as part of the LGBTQIA plus community, can you make suggestions for organizations? How could they improve representation and visibility for these individuals, especially in leadership positions?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And there's kind of like three buckets of things companies ought to do. And then I'll give you kind of more specific examples. One, you have to address the systemic barriers, which we all know exist for all underrepresented populations, including the LGBTQIA plus population. Number two, we have to really invest and enforce policies to promote inclusivity. And number three is actively supporting LGBTQIA plus individuals. Now, lots of fancy words. What does this actually mean? Let's make this, fancy words more actionable. So another thing we believe at PowerToFly is in the power of see it to be it, right? Until young girls start seeing female pilots, more female pilots, they're never going to grow up thinking, I can be a pilot one day, right? There used to be a time when all doctors were male, and until young girls started seeing female doctors, they never imagined themselves they could be one. So I think it's really important that if you have leaders in your company who are part of the LGBTQI plus community, you got to tell their story. You got to, participate. You got to, you got to participate in their story. And you can do that by producing articles, by having them speak at conferences, by producing video pieces. And that again helps inspire others because they can see it to be it. I think it's also a great idea to participate in conferences like the PowerToFly Pride Summit you're here today for. Make sure your company is a sponsor and participates in any job fairs happening featuring mostly Pride community members. As I said earlier, you also want to be producing video pieces, blog pieces, in general, just content, and distributing that content featuring any Pride related activity your company is supporting. Maybe you don't have leaders who are out of the closet, right? But or not even any colleagues who are openly gay. But I think you can still be present as an ally to all the key events, whether that's Pride Month, and by the way, all year long, right? That's really important point to make, that if you only celebrate Pride in June, it comes across a little bit unauthentic for the community at the end of the day, right? And there's a lot of more opportunities around the rest of the year: Transgender Day of Visibility, National Coming Out Day, right? There's just so many little moments where you can support actively your sport. I also think you have to make sure that the executive recruitment process has an appropriate, I call, proportional representation. And that will take effort at the top of your recruitment process funnel, right? And it's not going to come easy, but it's worth it. And it's an effort that you have to invest in. If you can commit to it, it will happen, right? And again, I'm not talking about selecting somebody for a specific job based on their identity. That is not okay. What I'm talking about is making sure that you're interviewing a representative panel of candidates. So you are not like only interviewing a certain demographic, but you have all the different demographics represented in the top funnel of your recruitment funnel. What else do I have? Yeah, and I think I kind of alluded to it. I use the word leaders who are openly gay or employees who are openly gay, because if you're at a company and you think you have 0 gay employees, I'm sure that is not true, right? But I think it's just so important for all of us to respond to bravery of coming out with kindness and support and celebration. And if you're in the closet, I hope you can find a way to be brave and come out. The world is definitely better on the other side, as terrifying as it is.
Yeah. And there's also the distinction, I think, of maybe someone that's out in their personal life, but doesn't have the psychological safety to feel okay to be out at work. If there isn't that support, right? Or that awareness and celebrating Pride and celebrating National Coming Out Day and all these things, are like, if I don't see any of that going on, I'm like, I think I might just keep my mouth shut about all of this part of myself.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That is such a good point to make. And I just can't even imagine what that must be like, right? To be out in life, but in the closet at work. I mean, that's so much stress. Like, this is like, you're not getting the best of that employee at all. The anxiety, depression, all that stuff that can happen from this incongruence of your identity and sexuality and how you present to the world is real. And we all can do much, much better as company leaders to make sure people are psychologically safe to come out at work.
I mean, it's such a testament to how it's an opportunity to grow. To be candid with you, I really started to embrace my pronouns here at work before I did out in the world. Because
wow.
I was,
amazing.
like, and maybe some more radical spaces, I was, starting to explore that part of myself. But then when I just was it was so enforced here, not like enforced, but like embraced here.
Embraced, yeah.
I started putting it in my Zoom name and putting in my email handles. And then one day it just became part of my regular email handle, not just my work one. So it helped me in a reverse engineered way, which is not the normal story, but a testament to PowerToFly.
This really warms my heart. So thank you, Hunter, for sharing that story. The work we do at PowerToFly is so hard every day. It's not easy. Like, we're really dismantling millennia of prejudice, not just hundreds of years, like literally thousands of years of bias and wrongness in the world. And that work is hard and it takes effort. And so when I hear a story like the one you just shared, it really makes it all worth it.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing.
Of course. And like you said, we need more like diversity in the room, whether it's LGBT or other parts of diversity, being, in gender and race and demographic and background, because it makes for a better opportunity for the work to be better. And like, I'm a better person since I started working here, because I've learned from heroes like you and Sienna Brown. Like, I wouldn't have known you had I not been here, but because of the environment, that makes me want to come to work when there's like a place that I'm inspired by the people around me.
Thank you for saying that.
Of
Appreciate
course,
that comment.
of course. So on that note, DE and IB, core to PowerToFly here. And I'm curious about the mission and how you have ensured that PowerToFly embodies inclusivity at its core. I started mentioning a little bit there, but what advice would you give to the next generation of entrepreneurs who want to create their own inclusive businesses and potentially some other businesses that are realizing that they have some work to do?
Yeah, I mean, so much of culture, I think, happens from the top and bottom at the same time, but it does come from the top, and it comes from what actions the leaders take, not just what the words they say. And so I think I've just been myself, and my co-founder was herself, and we were two founders who really cared about this, and try to imbue a culture of inclusivity from day one. And I'm not going to say we're perfect. We've had our missteps over the years. We've had our lows and we've had our highs, and that's okay. By the way, I think it's totally fine to say, hey, I'm not going to get it all right, but I'm trying, and I want tomorrow to be better than yesterday, right? And if I take a step back, I'm going to take 2 steps forward later. And so I think it's important that companies give each other that grace, and don't expect perfection. And I ask from the employees of companies to also give their leadership that grace, because the truth is, world's pretty stressful. Business is hard, not now in general, but now in particular. And so I think it's sometimes the workforce expects perfection from leadership, and that's just not how the world works. So I think as long as we're trying and we're doing the right things, we're moving in the right direction. But to kind of give a little bit more of an actionable advice for the companies out there who are trying to figure out, how do I make my company inclusive, right? And maybe that's top of mind for our attendees today. So whatever the stage of your company is, but let me just focus a little bit on companies that are just starting perhaps. But the truth is, this commentary is actually true for at any level of the company's journey. But when obviously the first few years of a startup are very formative. The culture that you form in the very early years, yes, you can lose it down the line, but it becomes a strong part of the DNA. And most leaders only start thinking about inclusivity when they hit 100+ headcount. Maybe some microaggressions start seeping in, or bullying, or they've lost some people, and they've left because they were treated badly, and then they're like, oh, we got to do this inclusivity thing, right? But the truth is, you really have to embody this in your company's DNA from day one. One concrete actionable insight that I recommend is to create your 3-year inclusivity, basically roadmap, inclusivity strategy roadmap, right? Like, just like you're doing a product roadmap, just like you're doing your go-to-market strategy and product strategy, you should have an inclusivity strategy, right? A people strategy. And you have to spell out, what would you like to accomplish? And most importantly, how are you going to resource it? Because let me tell you this, like, it does take budget to do any of this stuff, right? And it's important. People think it's just going to happen. No, set aside part of your budget for this, right? And I think you got to go every 6 months and revise that that roadmap and that strategy as needed, right? Like, just checking on it, say, hey, did we get this done? Is it still a priority for the next 6 months? Or how are we thinking about this? But once you have the core, then it's easier to update every 6 months. And I wouldn't expect to find an HR person who's also an expert at fostering belonging and inclusivity. Maybe you get lucky and you get one of those that is very cross-functional and gets it all, gets people operations, and gets DEI, and gets recruiting, and it gets employer branding, and it gets L&D and training. But that's pretty hard to find that generalist. And so you should allocate budget to work with an expert, like, shameless plug, but the DI consultants we have here at PowerToFly as well. Obviously, there's other folks you can work with as well, but I'm particularly partial to ours. I think as part of this 3-year strategy, you also want to make sure you're holding quarterly inclusivity trainings, or if you don't do kind of top-down trainings, you want to hold your team accountable for self-paced online inclusivity trainings as well. And yeah, both of those are also available at PowerToFly. Talk to us if you're interested in that later. And I'm not talking about a one-off unconscious bias training. That does nobody any good. In fact, actually, there's a lot of studies that if you do the training as a one-off, it is more harmful than if you didn't do any training at all, because all it does is signal to your employees that it doesn't matter. So you have to have some sort of quarterly schedule is the one actionable item I can say. Or if you're going to do, workshops and training stuff like that, quarterly I think is perfect. If you're going to do self-paced training, you have to figure out how to create this accountability of certain amount of learning modules a month, right? Yeah, I mean, as I said, actions mean more than words. And so if you allow your colleagues to bully, or, usually bully is a pretty extreme example, but way more often microaggressions happen to trans folks, or gay folks, or, I mean, I'm sure you've heard it all in your own professional experience, right? Yeah, if you don't stand up, and if you don't fix it, if you don't call out, and if you don't draw a line and say this is not acceptable at this company, then it will continue. And all of your participation in pride parades and anti-discrimination policies and equal opportunity statements are not going to mean a thing. And so, yeah, that's some of my words of advice for our audience.
Great. Yeah. We had a question from the audience that I'd love to pitch your way. When you were speaking earlier about there's been missteps, we make mistakes, that's okay. Someone asked, are there things you know now that you wish you knew earlier in the journey of launching PowerToFly? Also, happy 10 years.
Thank you so much. I mean, I guess I'll get personal with this answer. My wife came out as transgender about 7 years ago now, and PowerToFly is 10 years old. So I did not know much about the LGBTQI plus community until she came out. And so I really, really wish that I did. I really, really wish that I did, and that I had been more inclusive as a leader to those folks, and more welcoming and more proactive in seeking them out to be a participant in our workforce. I'll leave it at here, but of course there's many more. And I welcome the audience member who submitted that question to connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm super happy to chat one-on-one and connect. Milena Berry on LinkedIn. You can easily find me.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. We have a couple minutes left, and more questions are coming in from the chat. Here we go. So how it always happens in the last 5 minutes. How important is mentorship and sponsorship in uplifting LGBTQIA plus professionals in their careers? And are there any initiatives in supporting that talent?
It absolutely is very, 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 very important. Whether it's pride resource groups, I think they foster a sense of belonging, they foster a sense of connection, they foster a sense of I am not alone here, right, with my queer identity. And I think this is, again, very important for just, again, the sense of belonging, celebration, to get the best work out of one, and for you to be a decent human and the manager, right? And it's also very important that we get top-down support. So leadership publicly supports pride initiatives, right? And on a sponsorship level, I deeply believe in this, in kind of uplifting any underrepresented community, including the LGBTQIA plus community. And so leadership should actively sponsor and advocate for LGBTQI plus employees and their advancement. Again, you don't want to make a choice based on identity, but you also don't want to be clueless and kind of forget to make sure that you're thinking about the folks who don't, look like you or identify as you, etc. Right? You want to always make sure that you're taking, let's say, for promotion consideration, people have biases. They like to promote people who look like them and identify like them. And I think you should go out of your way to challenge that bias and to say, oh, let me put somebody in the mix here who I really, really, perhaps he's not like me, right?
Yeah. Well, we only have 2 minutes left. I'm going to throw one fun one into the mix. Well, these all been fun, but one little out of the box one. If you could have lunch with one leader from the LGBTQIA plus community, who would it be?
This is a tough one. There's so many, really. And just to make the point that leadership is not just in corporates, right? I'm going to choose a fun one. So, little story. I used to dance a lot from the age of 10 to the age of 19. I was kind of in a travel group with Bulgarian folk dances of all the things in the
Awesome.
world. But and then I stopped dancing for over 20 years.
Yeah.
And I've recently, my wife and I have gotten back into dancing lately. Obviously, not Bulgarian folk dances. Where would I find that in Brooklyn? It's super far and whatever. But we
Yeah.
go to a lot of Zumba classes and where we dance hip hop and reggaeton. And honestly, it's the best thing for the soul. I love it. It makes me so, so happy. And I have discovered an artist who I consider a leader because he's made so many Latinas proud to be gay. And her name is Young Miko, Miko, Young Miko. If you have not heard Young Miko, go out and have fun. I mean, she's big enough now. She's already played at MSG in Madison Square Garden. But if you haven't heard of her, go for it. Go check her out. Her music is incredible. And yeah, I'd love to have lunch with her if she would.
I love that. Well, Milena, this was so lovely. Thank you for kicking us off today. It was so great to chat with you. Thank you for opening up with us and some personal stuff as well. And I appreciate you. Thank you.
And thank you. Have fun with the rest of the summit, people. Here we go. Happy Pride. Okay.
See
Bye-bye.
you later.